Welcome to the Irish Pagan School podcast. Your hosts are authors and co-founders of the Irish Pagan School here in County Waterford, Ireland, Laura O'Brien and Jon O'Sullivan. Fáilte.
What is the magic of the Cauldron of the Dagda? Well, Dagda agus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome to Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School here. And that is a question that has a simple answer, but is also a little bit confused by many other cauldrons that we have in mythology. So to kind of clarify, when we're talking about the Cauldron of the Dagda, it is a cauldron. It is said to be one of the four great treasures of the Tuatha Dé Danann. So the Tuatha Dé Danann are Ireland's gods. They are the tribe that came into Ireland from, it's said, four great cities or islands in the north and east of the world. They are descended from the line of Irinbale, the soothsayer, son of Nimid. And so it was his son Beotach, it was actually the wives of Beotach that took their people out of oppression in Ireland from the Fomorians and went into these islands to the north and east, or north and west. So it is said then in those lands, in that time when they were away from Ireland, they had four great cities, and each of the cities had a seer or a sorcerer or a druid. In other translations, it's a filla or a poet, which kind of oversaw the rule of that city. So it was Findius, Fallius, Gorius, and Murius. So those are the names of the cities. And from each, when the Tuatha Dé Danann were gathering to return back to Ireland, the descendants of those who had left, they came from those cities and they brought with them the four great treasures. And from, hope I get this right now, I think it's from Gorias, they brought the sword, the Cleave Solus, the sword of light. They from Findius, they brought the spear against which no battle could be won. From Fallius, they brought the Lia Fall, the stone of sovereignty. And then the last place from Murius. Oddly enough, Murius is also listed as the fortress of pinnacles, from which all battles were won outside. So the poetry that gives us this information comes from the Yellow Book of Lecan, which is one of the medieval manuscripts that were written down to record those stories. And Murius is the only one that has a little bit of extra information. It's this fortress of pinnacles that all battles were won outside. But from Murius, whose overseer was a filla, a poet, a person, sorry, we don't have a gender actually, a person by the name of Semius, was brought the Cauldron of the Dagda. And the magic of the Cauldron of the Dagda is that no company goes from it unsatisfied. That is it. Now, in the rest of the mythology, we have kind of healing fountains. Dean and his children knew the lore of healing so well that they could gather all of these herbs, put it into a trough or a well, and chant the healing words over it, so that any person suffering even a mortal wound, if they were put into the water, they would rise from the water fully healed. Now, there are other mythological stories. I believe it's the Welsh mythology that has a cauldron that has healing properties, where someone put into the cauldron comes back out of it alive. So not all cauldrons are the same cauldrons. So the one that we have brought from Murias is known as Cor Einseach, and the Cor Einseach, the what we have definitively about the Cor Einseach is that no company goes from it unsatisfied. Now, this links the Dagda, and it's actually called the Cauldron of the Dagda. Now, whether the Dagda is the Dagda because he possesses the cauldron, or whether the cauldron is the Cauldron of the Dagda is because the Dagda has the cauldron, is never actually clarified. You know, we have Cleave Solus, the sword of light, we have the spear, we have the Lia Fall. They're all named for themselves. The cauldron is the only one that is called the Cauldron of the Dagda. So does that mean the Dagda came from Murius? Does that mean that whoever came from Murius bringing the cauldron becomes the Dagda? There's whole areas of the lore and the mythology that we don't know, and we may never know. What we do know of the Tuatha Dé Danann deity, known as Dagda, also known as Uchud, also known as Allahur, he has actually many, many names, is that he is a son of Delbeth. He is brother to Oma, the champion god of the Tuatha Dé Danann, and he is just this mainstay deity for his people. In fact, he's the deity that all of the other Tuatha Dé Danann look to when they need help. When something has to get done and they don't have the ability within themselves to do it, or they need someone who's going to guarantee it's done, the Dagda is the one that they turn to. So for him to possess this cauldron from which no company goes unsatisfied really connects him with the culture of hospitality in Ireland. The idea that when people come to the cauldron, no matter who they are, how many they are, you feed them, you look after them, you take care of them. In the old Brehon laws, there were people within the Irish society who had to offer hospitality. Kings, chieftains, also people known as brua, who were the most wealthy or well-off people of the farming caste in the tribal structure of ancient Ireland. It meant that if anyone came to their house at all requesting hospitality, these people were not allowed to refuse them. They had to provide for them. And it wasn't just here's a loaf of bread and like, a sip of water. It was you take care of them as if they are family. They eat what you eat, they sleep and are cared for as if they were family. One of the extra elements to that was that a brewer um was not under no obligation to give people from their household to a war effort within the Tuatha. So if this upper echelon or upper caste of the farming element within tribal Ireland, the Tuatha of Ireland, didn't have to give people to any war effort for their chieftain. They were a place of neutrality, and anyone who came was cared for, regardless of who they are, their lineage, or anything like that at all. So it's one thing I really, really love about that culture of the time, which in a way still kind of exists down in Ireland. Like, if you come into someone's home, if you're welcomed into someone's home, will you have a cup of tea, bit of coffee? Would you like a sandwich? Would you like a biscuit? That culture exists today, and it is almost like it is the continuance of that ancient process of offering hospitality. If people come into your home, you look to them, you care for them in the same way you would hope that they would look or care for you or anyone else who comes into their home. And it is that supportive culture, which I think is one of the mainstays of being Irish, really. When we look at the per capita population of money given to charity, Ireland is quite highly ranked globally for supporting other people in those ways. Also because we have been supported in the past and we needed to be supported in the past because we were a colonized and abused culture. But I'm getting off target. We need to get back onto the cauldron. So it's referred to as the Undry. So the cauldron itself is known as Cor Ainseach, but it's also called Undry. Now, that's not Undry. If anyone says that the magical name of the cauldron is Undry, they're wrong. They're not understanding the translation of it. It is undry, in that the cauldron was always wet, in that the cauldron was always full. Now, whether it was a magical, mystical cauldron that like just always was overflowing, some form of cornucopia-esque, we don't know for sure. But we do know the information that was given to us about the cauldron is that no company goes from it unsatisfied. So whether that's the Dagda up early morning, making sure he's got a pot on the go the entire day, just in case anyone turns up, or whether or not it's a magic cauldron that automatically refills itself with no effort, who's to say for sure? Because he is, after all, the good god of druidry at the end of the day. So when I, as a pagan, a practicing Irish pagan, and someone who is devoted to the Dagda and work with the cauldron or the symbolism of the cauldron, how does that apply for me in my beliefs? It applies in that maintaining the cultural hospitality. If I'm bringing someone into the house, I will make sure I fuss for them a little bit. It won't be a case of I go on, sit down, fuck. I'll be the person who's like, do you have enough? Do you have this? And it was how I was raised in a way, and it's almost edifying to a certain degree that studying later in life, studying Irish culture, the core elements of that hospitality has always been recognized as part of Irish culture. But when it comes to the practice of spirituality around that and going deeper beyond it, like I asked myself the question of like, where would this cauldron be? Like if it was the Dagda's feasting hall, where would the cauldron be? It would be in the hearth. It would be on the fire. Where would you have a hearth or a fire? In the central space of your home. And so when you have a hearth fire with food going on it, people tend to gather. Like if there's something happening in the kitchen, people tend to come in and be standing around having chats in the kitchen as much as like sitting in a sitting room or anywhere else. So it's part of that home environment. And so the concept really, no company goes from it unsatisfied. The question I ask myself when I consider the symbolism of the cauldron, is a full belly the only form of satisfaction we get or need? And for me, no, it's not. And so sitting around a fire, sitting around a hearth, I've had the pleasure and like the delight of being able to do that in many places over my time. There is something extra about sitting in the hearth space, sitting around like a pot bubbling away, having chats, having conversations, because no one sits in silence when you're coming here to have food and share a meal together. It is that interaction, it is that community, it is that connection and sharing of the stories, good, bad, indifferent, all of that kind of stuff. So that leads to a deeper level of satisfaction as we recognize the stories and narratives of ourselves that we need to share and let go of, but then also the stories and narratives of other people sharing around a comfortable meal in a nice place in front of a fire and a warm hearth. So the concept of the cauldron and no company going from it unsatisfied, yep, absolutely look after the full bellies, but also consider, maybe ask yourself the question, how do you define satisfaction? If you were to come to the cauldron for yourself, if you use that as part of your practice, as part of your symbolism as a pagan person or a spiritual person, how would satisfaction be defined for you? And what can you do for yourself to pursue that, to engage in that, and to make that more of your lived experience every day? So, with that, I will say thank you very much for stopping by. We do have a lot of additional free content available for you. Go to irishpagan.school/free. You can find an entire class there about the Dagda, domestic deity and hearth hero, is the name of that class. You can take that for free. There's a whole lot of more content available for you there. And it gets you onto the mailing list so you don't miss out with the rest of the content that we produce here at the Irish Pagan School. So, with that, thank you very much, Gaurav Mila Mahagath, and until next time, Slán, look after yourself. Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a positive review in your podcast listener. Then head over to irishpaganschool.com and enroll in one of our free or paid courses. Slán go fóill, and we will see you next time.